Guys, welcome to Maintain Your Shit. We are out here in Pioche, Nevada. We had to drive 2.5 hours. The homeowners gave Shawn a call and said, hey, we're very fearful right now. It's dropping to about 6 degrees tonight. It's going to snow all next week. And we're really afraid because our furnace just went down and our pipes are most likely going to burst and we need your help. And so, Shawn, we went to the shop. We went and got everything we need because when you do a house call like this, you never know what you're going to find. You never know what you're going to find out, what's going to happen. You want to know if you're going to have the right parts on you and everything. And so Shawn is in there right now diagnosing the issue, hoping and praying that we can get them fixed. Because if you're a homeowner, especially out in the middle of nowhere where it gets really cold and snowy, you know that if you don't have heat and it's really cold, more problems can happen. And we do not want that to happen. So Shawn's in there right now. Hopefully he can fix the issue and the homeowners will be saved and we do not have to worry about any major problems.
So we've got a electric furnace here that had turned off. The customer had turned the breakers off and back on and was able to produce heat, but then it failed again last night. So dig in here and see what kind of issue we've got. Okay, so you can see right here on this leg I've got 230 or 250 volts. This upper one's on and I'm not getting anything out of it, so I'm going to test from leg to ground. From that leg to ground I've got nothing. From that leg to ground I've got nothing. Let's see if I can test the power going into this top breaker. Just on two separate breakers. So just test the front. Okay, so we don't have anything there. So we've got power there. And so the breaker's off in here, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and turn that on. All right, so I'm gonna see what's going on by amping out each wire to see if I've got, if it's pulling power. Okay, so that element's got 24 amps being pulled on it. So the breaker's tripped the breaker just barely.
What tripped it?
Over amping tripped it. That's what I was wondering, if that thing, sometimes they'll trip and they don't look like they're tripped because only one side of it's tripped. So I'm going to reset it and I'm going to test the, yeah, so it's pulling 47 amps.
Yeah.
These are both 60s. Yeah. Kill the power to it and I want to slide the fan out and visually look at the heating element.
Oh.
Make sure we don't have a heating element that's like touching something, that maybe it's, you know, the fan's blowing on it and it blows just enough to touch the side or something and trip that breaker. Yeah, this kind of a call is like a technician's worst nightmare, right? Because you're like, you guys are hoping that I can find a problem, and
Yeah.
It's nice when you like pull into these and there's like melted wires or something, but we're just kind of trying to find a needle in a haystack right now. If it wasn't working, it'd be easy to say, oh, yep, right here. When you called me and said it was off, I was so relieved. I'm like, finally, I bet we can.
Yeah, is it?
Are those heating elements?
These are heating elements, yep. So I'm just gonna pull these out and inspect them and see why they wouldn't be working. These little guys here, this is a temperature sensor, so if it gets too hot, meaning that the fan is not blowing, then it'll turn off the heat. But they were all working and pulling the correct amount of amps. Everything looks good on that one. You know, if we're pulling at the max load on that and it's tripped that while we're sitting here, there's a really good possibility that it's just tripping one side of that. A lot of times when they trip, the heating element, the heating element should, like, you know, once you turn off the heat, you turn off the power to the heating elements, but you run the fan so that it disperses all the heat that's in the elements. If it were to trip and turn everything off, there's a possibility that these things are still glowing bright red, and look how close they are to that little sensor. So if these sensors trip, you could turn that back on and these would have to basically get blowing pretty cold air before these would reset and then start blowing hot air again. But the only thing that would cause that is if like half of that tripped and it killed that blower motor while these were running, and then these heated that up and then you reset it, it would turn back on and blow cold air while these were off. but then eventually it would click these back on and start producing hot air again.
Okay.
So that's...
So it could be just that 60 amp.
Could be just that 60 amp giving us a problem.
Okay.
I mean,
That sounds,
especially where not, you know, so far that's the only thing that's
yeah.
happened for sure, 100%. I mean, I wish I could see it trip half of that so I could, you know, guarantee that that's what's happening, but they'll start to get kind of hot, these breakers.
Okay.
And usually when they trip is when they're starting to get hot. But it is weird that that tripped like it did, and it wasn't like, usually when they trip they're really, really hot.
Yeah.
So, and when you reset it, if you would have done it fast enough, all three of those would have been off on a thermal overload, so your blower would have turned on, but no heat would be coming out until they got cold enough to kick them back on. It sure would feel better if I knew 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, but it did, we did see it trip.
I feel it.
And see, this one is your other one, this guy here.
Uh-huh.
These two go to that lower element.
Okay.
But this one controls the top two and the blower. It's hard to tell. I don't know if you...
Oh yeah, it's warm.
On top versus
Right
the
there.
bottom up.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything going to ground at all, right? And so what I did though was like this side of it was warm, but then when you felt this, it was really hot. And so I'm thinking sometimes if it trips this side and not, it'll look like it's still set, right?
You have a screwdriver to
Yep.
pull that off. I've got a 50 and I got a 60.
Perfect.
I want to see which one will fit.
Okay, I think that 60 will fit because we do have these two homes here.
Okay.
So I'll bet that'll snap right in there. Grab my and they look fine, but I got like almost a full turn out of that top screw.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe that's creating and adding to it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's replace it, but that
Yeah.
could add to the heat that thing's drawing. So, okay, well, we got that furnace all taken care of. We pulled the heating elements out. Everything looked great. All the wiring looks great. The unit looks like it's brand new. While we were there, it did trip the breaker. We felt the breaker, and one side of the breaker was hotter than the other. This is a 2-pole breaker, so they should both be the same temperature. It's a 60 amp breaker. The system was pulling 48 amps. Upon removal of the face, we did notice that the wire going to the breaker was loose, about 1 full turn. We tightened that up, and that seemed to make that the heating problem go away. But just to be sure, we called a local electrician, had him come over and change out that 60 amp breaker. I really like it when we come on a heater call or an AC call when you can see what the problem is and diagnose it 100%. When they're running, you just have to go through a process of elimination and try to do the best job that you can for the customer so that you don't have to come back. I feel 95% confident that we've solved the problem. I wish I felt 100% about it. I wish I could have found the smoking gun, but the breaker did trip while we were there, so I feel confident that that was the issue. And we've got another happy customer.